Exports are playing an increasing role in the beef industry, and Derrell, kind of walk us through how they're actually playing a role in that.
Well, exports, add value in several different ways. Obviously, we think about selling more products when we have more markets to access. So, additional volume, if you will, is part of it. Some markets we can export to that have a higher value in those markets than they do in the U.S. So we add additional value in that sense. One of the roles that I think people often overlook is the fact that beef produces lots of different products. Every critter produces a whole set of products, and we don't utilize all those very well in the U.S. So, and yet it's perishable product. They're going to get eaten. So the more you can export things that we have less demand for in the U.S. to some other market where it maybe has a higher value, but more importantly, it doesn't detract from value in the U.S. And again, those products are going to get eaten. So the more we can move those products out, it lets our domestic demand really focus on the higher valued products that are more in demand here.
Now you were talking about foreign markets there. What are some of our major export markets?
Well, there are 5 markets that really account for the bulk of our exports at this time. Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Canada, and Hong Kong at this point in time are the 5 biggest markets.
Now, we didn't hear China on that list. Now, there's been some Chinese news here lately.
A lot of work, recently, a lot of talk about getting the Chinese market open for the first time in many years. The agreement's in place. And so, over time, this could be a very, very important market for the U.S. I think the key there is probably over time. I don't think it will be immediately. International trade involves really sort of 2 major steps. One is the political step of getting access, determining what the stipulations and restrictions are going to be. And that's kind of what we got this week, was those details on what it takes to qualify for that market. And then the market itself has to work in terms of figuring out what products are demanded, what the value of those products will be in that market, and so on. And of course, we're going to have to make some changes and incur some additional cost in the U.S. to get those products to that market. So there's a lot of market forces that have to work here. And again, over time, I think it will be a very important market, but it will take some time.
Now, we've been talking about exports. U.S. also brings in beef also. Does that kind of dilute the U.S. market?
People think of that, obviously imports competing with our domestic production. But in the case of beef, it's kind of unique. It really doesn't, because the products that we import in beef are primarily for processing for ground beef market, and it's driven by our huge hamburger market. And when we bring in products that help us balance the mix of lean and fat that goes into ground beef, it actually allows us to utilize our domestic production for higher values. So it seems counterintuitive and a little bit frustrating sometimes to people, but exports or imports of beef actually add value to the U.S. beef industry, because again, it lets us utilize our products to a higher total value.
Where do we get a lot of this imported beef from?
Again, there are 5 major markets that are the principal sources of U.S. beef imports. So Australia, Canada last year was number 2, New Zealand, Mexico, and then Brazil make up the top 5 markets right now.
Okay, thank you much. Derrell Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.